All right, so we'll get started. I wanted to chat with you today about negotiating in today's market. Um, I would say with the show of hands, but I would imagine that you there is when you're working with buyers, it's super hard to get offers accepted. So I wanted to go over what we've been learning and being trained in Club Wealth with coaches across the country and just trying to better everybody to help their clients and make you guys more money. So, what are some issues you guys are running into with that? Mike, do you guys have a lot of FHA buyers, conventional? Hey, Vicky. Can you guys hear me?
She says hi.
So, a lot of things that are working for other agents. I think one of the biggest things that we need to do is, last year was easy, guys. Whether you did one transaction or 100 transactions, last year was easy, right? You get a buyer, they're qualified, you're going to get it, you're going to get a house, more than likely. Now, real estate is arguably the hardest it's been. I've talked to a lot of brokers and realtors who have been in the business decades, and it's never been like this. We're seeing a 50% decrease in houses for sale than last year. And we're seeing there are way more listings than there are even realtors. No, opposite. There's way more realtors than there are listings. So we're going to see a mass exodus, I would imagine, of realtors that can't figure out or can't, make it, which is good for the agents that are willing to push through. I have a feeling that the agents that figure it out in the toughest market most realtors have ever seen will be laying down a really good foundation to continue being even better, you know. So with it being like easy last year compared to it being hard this year, I think one big thing that we have to keep in mind is we have to know that, right? But we still have to keep doing the same things that we were doing. We just have to do it way more. We're showing more houses, we're filling out more offers. If it was 3 showings or 5 showings last year and 1 offer, now it might be 50 showings and 10 offers before you finally get it. But we got to stay positive, can't give up, and you have to do the same things. And some things that we have found that work really well is, and it's super easy, and a lot of agents don't do it, is calling the listing agent. Okay. And just asking them, what is it going to take to get done? What exactly is the seller looking for? Okay. So a lot of times, most common is money, but there's a lot of sellers out there that want rent backs, right? Where you close on the house, let the seller live there till they get to buy their house because they're having a hard time finding a house as well. So, and then close date. Some sellers want to close, tomorrow. Some want to wait, June, July. And it just puts your offer and your clients in a way better position if you just have the information. And you won't have the information unless you ask. So, and again, it's more work this year because you're doing it more often, but you've got to do the same thing for every single offer to give you guys the best chance and your clients the best chance to get it. Because most of these, you're not getting counters, it's highest and best. So you don't want to be dinking around giving the seller something that you would have given them had you known. Figure it out, ask them. What are the best, what are the terms the seller is looking for? regards to close date or rent back, etc. Some other things, a lot of agents are starting to do across the country, and I'm seeing it in Minnesota as well, is they're waiving contingencies. Now, I would never recommend buyers to waive an inspection contingency, but there is another way to help make that possible. And there's 3 or 4 inspectors out there that will go to the house on the initial showing with you. Okay. So you're showing your clients a house at 123 Main Street, inspector meets you there. They're not doing a full buyer's inspection. They're going to walk through and check the major stuff, right? So foundation, appliances, mechanicals, etc. The main stuff that we should be looking for that are big deals. They're not going to be checking outlets and stuff like that. And that ranges from $100 a time. I think somewhere a little bit more expensive than that. But that is a super good resource to be able to waive the inspection contingency as long as your buyers are aware. I mean, you can still do the inspection, but you just can't cancel without losing your earnest money, or it's obviously super hard to ask for any repairs or cash off if you don't have an inspection contingency. And right now, let's be real, the sellers have all the leverage anyways. So that's very good option. Another option is adding the biggest thing is like talking to your buyers, right? You have to set the expectations. So if you have a buyer that has some cash, a lot of agents are finding success, and it's almost mandatory on most of the listings, is an appraisal gap coverage. So, and it does work with FHA. And what that entails, guys, is let's say the house is 250,000, your clients offer 300,000, it appraises at 275. Now the seller, you have to negotiate. Sellers and selling agents are aware of this, so they want to protect themselves and get them obviously the most money. So what some clients are doing is a full appraisal gap. So if they offer 300,000, it appraises at 275. Buyers have to make up the difference of that 25 grand. Okay. And you can do littler numbers. You don't have to do full. You can do 10,000, 5,000, 15,000. It just varies depending on the price point and what your buyers have available, right? So that's another thing, is the appraisal gap. And if you guys have any questions after the fact or right now, just shoot them in chat or unmute yourself. So that's a good one. I would assume that there are no offers being accepted where the seller's paying closing costs. So, if you have buyers that need closing costs, I would talk to the lender and see if there are any creative ways to not need them. And if they do need them, then you're definitely looking at houses that, have been sitting for a little bit, have less leverage, that, the sellers that have less leverage to even have an opportunity. So that's another thing. Another super interesting thing. So you can have a non-refundable earnest money, guys. So that's straightforward, right? You pay the earnest money, it's the sellers, no matter what, it's non-refundable. Which along the same lines as that, there's another thing called a contract bonus. Okay. And what that is, you tell your buyers like, hey, what are you willing, like if the seller signs your purchase agreement as a non-refundable bonus directly to the seller, what are you willing to do for that? And of course, that is only if and when the contract gets signed. It's not, beforehand. So, that can be 1,000, 2,500 bucks. Just say, hey, which technically is non-refundable earnest money, but you're calling it different so that, you stand out, which is a big deal. Let's see. Another thing that's super critical right now is working together as a brokerage, right? So when we see houses that are coming soon, or if you know a property coming on the market, post it in the NRG Agent Connect, and see if you have a someone that's within the brokerage that wants to take it. So off market potentials. Just obviously make your buyers aware, like, hey, what's it worth to you to not compete, right? Obviously, you want to be fair to the sellers. So um, that's super important. Let's see. So those are some very good options. Any of you guys have any questions? Oh yeah, 3 years ago for sure. When you guys do a chat, make sure you or select everyone. So yeah, with the market being so different, there's no reason a seller would. I'll post this in the chat. So there's no reason with an issue with appraisal, knowing a buyer doesn't have the cash to cover it, they would be accepting an offer with closing costs. So those are all questions that you guys have to be aware of, it's just the way it is right now. So, having them save up so they don't need the closing costs, finding, there are 401k loans. You can loan your money back to yourself and pay yourself back. There's a lot of different creative ways, but you got to ask the questions. Okay. Don't expect the buyers to do that. They're not going to be like, that's our job, is to be creative, think outside the box, ask the right questions so that the lender, and typically good lenders will do that, but it's different than it was, right? Last year we can get closing costs or half the closing costs. This year it's like, I would imagine sellers don't even entertain that. Once they see that that's checked, that seller's paying closing costs, no matter if the offer, if the offer is $5 million, doesn't matter because it's not going to appraise. So just be aware and think about it from a seller's point of view. Any of you guys have any testimonies to that effect or questions? Hopefully you guys are all doing well. Awesome. Another big thing. So another thing I've learned just in negotiations with almost everything is asking trying to get where someone else's head's at. Like, hey, what do you think is fair? What do you think could get this done? Stuff like that. And the reason is a lot of agents out there, guys, they just want to check the box, right? They want this to be done. I have so many offers where offer gets accepted and inspection, we get another $3,000 off in the craziest seller market in like the history of the world. And they don't even ask, they don't even counter. So what that leads me to believe is like, they just want to check the box. They're afraid to lose the deal because they don't know, they don't understand the leverage that they have. So that's big, right? Like, hey, what do you think could get this done? And then you get to see where their brain's at, and you will be so surprised at what they tell you. Like, it's crazy. Like, you're thinking $500 and they'll say, yeah, they do 1,500 or something, like it's People are just, that's the way some agents are, So just be aware of that. And I love negotiating. So if you guys have any questions or what to do, PM me on Facebook or text me, whatever the case may be. I love helping, deals with that. So what has worked? Deborah has a question. What's worked for folks who have had offers accepted recently? Along the list, most of the offers getting accepted have all of the above, Deborah. No inspection, appraisal waivers, right? Or, if it's conventional, you can waive the appraisal or like the difference, like the buyer will come up with the difference. Cash obviously is king right now. And yeah, so the no inspection, appraisal waiver or appraisal gap coverage is like required. Higher earnest money, it is what it is. It just depends what whether it's $1 or $10,000. If you have an inspection contingency, it doesn't really matter. But that can work. Highest earnest money, higher earnest money. Another thing would be the non-refundable earnest money or like a bonus, which is kind of the same thing, but again, we're calling it something different, so we stand out. One more thing, guys. I just had to do this on an offer recently. A lot of agents see that it's FHA and just assume that, well, all the buyer will be able to pay is the appraisal. And I've confirmed with a couple different sources that if the buyer has the cash, they can come to closing with cash above what the appraisal was, okay? But the listing agents don't know that, okay? So like I made it super apparent in my email, sending the offer and calling them like, hey, just so you know, X, Y, and Z. Buyers are willing to do this. Like put all your top talking points in the email. Make it easy for them to sell the seller on your deal. Okay. Another thing is, and this goes so like just building relationships with other realtors is like huge. Okay. So talking with the listing agent, if they're one of the agents that are like, oh, I've been in the business for 700 years, fill them with that. Oh my gosh, yeah, I heard about you, like feed them what they want. Like it works. Other than that, obviously you're just building to your relationship with them. It makes a big difference. Like it's surprising how big of a difference it makes. And then of course, guys, the lender you choose is a big deal. If they're using some Joe Schmo lender that gives a pre-approval to anybody, they're not going to take that risk. So be aware of that. My team's lenders, they'll send a letter, or not a letter, sorry, an email. So every time I submit an offer, I CC my lender, let them, and then that's their invitation to call the agent themselves. One of my lenders will send a video explaining the buyers, how awesomely qualified they are. They got cash. They've been fully underwritten already, And again, why that matters is because you have to give them the stuff to sell the sellers. You cannot assume that the agent knows this lender, knows how qualified they are. There's 20, 30, 40 other offers. You have to stand out. And I will guarantee that there is under 5 agents that call the listing agent out of 20. And that's probably high. It's probably 1 or 2 because everyone's giving up, guys. They're like, another offer. It's not even going to get accepted. Just Debbie Downers, and probably Debbie Downers to their clients too. But that's just an advantage to us, the ones that stay positive and, keep, like I said at the beginning, keep doing the same thing that we were doing. It's just more times that we have to do it. So, all right. So is Bitcoin being used now? I haven't seen it in Minnesota. I do know that there's a couple websites that do allow transactions via Bitcoin. There's also a title company, I believe, that does that process, because you have to escrow it or whatever the case may be. I know it's possible. They're not leveraging, there is one token that I'm aware of that leverages your cryptocurrency as cash that you can use as loans. But, it's not something that I could point you in the right direction of. This is how you do it. So it's definitely possible. And yeah, I mean, thousands of houses have probably been purchased in Bitcoin. So I just wouldn't send a picture of your Bitcoin balance as a pre-approval or something like that. It's not going to go anywhere. But all right. And then Lisa wants a little bit better explanation of the bonus. Easiest way to describe it is, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Listing Agent, if your seller accepts our offer, I'm going to give you X dollars, just as like a signing bonus. If they sign and agree to the offer, it's non-refundable, it's theirs. Okay. And technically, guys, it could be, a portion of the earnest money that's non-refundable. But again, we're calling it something different as a signing bonus, a bonus. So we stand out, because I will promise you that no one's even doing that. There are some other, some other agents across the country that have brought it up in our last coaching mastermind. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like genius, and like I said, again, technically it is just non-refundable earnest money. But again, we're calling it something different to stand out. So, I mean, you could even do, like, if you're doing $5,000 earnest money, you could do, hey, 2,500 of that is non-refundable. So there's lots of different ways. Any other questions, stuff you guys are running into? It would not. It's straight. Good question, Nicholas. Very good question. That is like just straight out of that's such a good question. That doesn't flow anywhere. That is not earnest money. That is basically just, the seller's privy to the transaction, so it's allowed, but it's basically non-refundable earnest money in a way, without it being credited to closing. I would imagine it would show up somewhere, but it's basically just offering X dollars above the purchase price, some of which is being paid up front. Either an amendment. I put it in the email, like I need the agent to see it. So my last one was like, hey, if seller accepts offer, buyer will pay $1,000 bonus. We were super close to getting that one, but it's FHA, super hard. And then, yeah, just if you're doing it ahead of time, this was last minute, so I would do an addendum is fine. And one other thing, guys, I don't know if you guys have ever tinked around with escalation clauses. A year ago, no one was doing them in Minnesota. Now there's quite a few of them. Some listing agents are telling their sellers that it's not good. Whatever that means. I mean, I guess. But so just pay attention, because you don't want to not see that in the agent remarks. Typically, they're like, seller won't do this, seller won't do that, seller won't do this. And you got to pay attention, because you don't want to put that in the offer when you would have done the either, but you didn't see it. And you can ask the listing agents as well when you're talking to them on the phone, like, hey, would the sellers entertain an escalation clause? Most of them, I mean, they have leverage right now. So most of them are just like, nope, I want highest and best, no escalations. And then, you know, you're kind of, that's just what you got to do. So, and then, so when you do have these addendums or amendments, put them first when you're sending the offer, especially if you're doing an escalation clause. Okay. And again, if you get an agent that's done one transaction in 700 years, they probably have no idea what an escalation clause is. So you have to call them and say, hey, we submitted an escalation clause. Have you done that before? Yes, no. If it's no, then hey, this is what it means. Again, you're giving them the information to sell the seller on your offer. Otherwise, if they don't know, they're going to be like, you can imagine it would not go well. Like, I don't even know what that is. That's so weird. We'll skip that one, or whatever the case may be, you know? So hopefully that helps. Very good questions, Nick. So Lynn asked, Home Partners of America, how are negotiations going? They are phenomenal. So it's all cash, no appraisal, and you know, quick as possible closing that the seller allows. And they are doing escalation clauses, unless the seller requires them not to. But I mean, we got one accepted. Off purchase price was, or the list price was 400. They paid 450. We got another one that 325. They escalated it up to 370. I mean, it's crazy. I'm telling you guys, like, if you guys, it is such a no-brainer. If you guys have sellers that are coming soon in the next 2 or 3 weeks, you don't have a listing agreement yet. Or if you do have one, you obviously have a with MLS withhold form or whatever whatever you guys are doing for that. Or if you guys do any investments yourself or work with investors that do flipping of properties. Or if you work with rentals that are selling, then it is an absolute no-brainer. And we will do all the marketing. My team, I have property management software, so we can do all the rental marketing and stuff like that to get home partners to buy said house, and they will pay more than market value. So, I mean, it's a super way to look like a rock star to get your clients cash, quick close before it even hits the market. So just something to think about if you guys have any questions about that. I mean, they don't buy everywhere, but they buy pretty much anywhere in the Twin Cities, minus like 3 or 10 cities. Homes, like single families and townhouses, as long as they allow rentals, up to 500,000 now. So to me, it's like an absolute no-brainer. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I missed this. Okay. This is huge. Okay. So the list price is null and void. The list price on houses mean nothing. Some are way overpriced, and some you look at and you're like, I hate you. Like you're $100 grand underpriced or whatever, something bananas, Your clients have to know that. Like, hey, this list price is super arbitrary, like means nothing. So what you have to convey to them is, on a monthly basis, what is this house worth to you to own? Okay. And for them to be knowledgeable on what that means, best case, ask them to ask the lender, or get connected with their lender and say, hey, can you break down payments at these purchase prices, 250, 275, 300, and what the down payment would be or whatever. Because the reality is, it's, I don't know, it's like $50 or $100 for every 25,000. right? Like they see 25 grand and they're like, no way, that's way too much. But then they're like, oh, it's only $100 a month. Guys, I'm telling you, I guarantee people are losing houses for $50 a month, $100 a month. And like you have to somehow convey to your buyers that the list price is so, it means nothing. I mean, they might as well just auction these houses. I mean, it literally means nothing. And listing agents are playing that game, where they get everybody at the 250,000 price point, and so they get 100 offers up to 350 or whatever it comes to. They'd love that, to use that for marketing or getting other sellers, etc. So that's huge. That is huge. So yeah, easiest way to go about that is obviously explaining to your buyer, and then also getting, I mean, they need to know what the breakdown is. So at 275, it's X dollars a month, 300, it's X dollars a month. And that's gonna help you guys big time. Like, I don't even ask what do they want to pay. It's almost, what's the payment that you're looking for? Like, what is this house worth to you on a monthly basis? If it goes for $50 more a month, you're not going to be sad about it. Does that make sense? Any questions about that? Super important. One thing as well, because listing agents are underpricing houses to get 7 million offers, don't be naive and be the agent showing, if your client's approved for 300,000, don't be showing them $300,000 houses. You're just setting everyone up for failure. You got to show them, between 230 and 260, because you're gonna pay 300,000, right? So like, we have a lot of control over the frustrations. It's our job to delete the hurdles in front of our buyers and delete the frustrations, because we just know. And maybe, it takes a couple for them to lose before they finally get it. And that's fine too. It's part of the game sometimes, where they have to learn, not the hard way, but, learn that what you're saying is accurate. So any other questions? You guys got a whole slew of amazing realtors in here. Any of you guys have any questions, negotiation related or not? Cool. Going through my notes. I see a couple other things you could do. You could potentially pay for the seller fees. Trying to go through these and see if there's any good ones. Yeah, so a lot of buyers, guys, are going to say, well, I don't want to overpay. But again, they can't look at it that way. It's definitely all about it's all about that monthly payment for what that house is worth. All right, so escalation deals. I mean, Home Partners requires the purchase agreement that enacted the offer. So I'd be fine doing that. If it were my actual client where I have control, like as a buyer, not a corporation where this is what I need or we're not doing the deal. I mean, it's a lot of honor system. because technically, I mean, the agent's aunt could write an offer for $5 billion, and it's like, whatever. So if they wanted to be shady, they could be. So it's kind of up to you, if you're protecting the buyer, if it's something crazy where you offer 400, but you're escalating up to 600 and they're like, yeah, we got an offer to 595, then yeah, you probably want more proof. But, like page 1 of the purchase agreement, cross the names out, something like that. Just work with the other agent, make it easy to get the deal done. I mean, the reality is if you're competing against 20 people, your buyers are willing to pay that, get it done. Don't be dumb about it, but, be smart. Ask Randy, ask me, again, it's the honor system. If they wanted to be shady, they could have the seller's brother write an offer for whatever, so very, very good question. What would bargaining chips include? So Lynn asked, do you do bargaining chips for a win-win? That's kind of what that first call is to the listing agent is, how can we best make this happen? The bonus, the signing bonus to the seller. I mean, there are people that are like doing crazy stuff, like paying for the sellers to move. Rent back in this pandemic is absolutely crazy to do. And if you guys run into that, please reach out to me or Randy. If you guys are trying to put together a seller rent back, I don't care what anyone says. I would imagine that they would be categorized as a renter, and they have a lot of rights right now. Just as you can see what happened in California. You want to lease and, don't just trust that they're going to move out in 2 weeks, stuff like that. And that's not very common here that I've noticed. But if you run into it, it's definitely a good way to get offers accepted. Let's see. Does that answer your question a little bit, Lynn? Because there's not much else you can do. It's all about the seller's net. Whatever the most amount of money you can get them, I'm like asking the other agent is obviously super important. And one more thing, guys, this is actually huge. And you will notice that a ton of people you have 15 minutes to look at a house. 15, So there's a lot of buyer's remorse coming on the market. So, that's why that phone call to the listing agent is so important. Okay. So, telling them like, oh my gosh, the buyers love this. It's like their favorite house that we've looked at, stuff like that. Because again, it's going to happen. Like agents that aren't verifying that the buyers even looked at the house, and people are doing sight unseen offers because they're just sick of looking at all these houses, submitting all these offers and not getting accepted because agents are just trying to check the box. It's super important that they're aware of how much your buyer likes the house. Sometimes we do buyer letters. Again, listing agents are kind of not sending them the buyer letters with the offers, but that's worked drastically for both the buy side and even for sellers. I had an interesting offer come in on a pretty high price listing, and they actually had a video that basically went over how amazing the house was, and it really, because the offer was interesting, it wasn't amazing, but we just knew that they would get it done because they love the house so much, whatever the case may be. So that can help. You know, that used to help when maybe there was a couple offers and it turned it from from business to personal. Now it's like there's 1,000 offers, like they don't have time to like go through your buyer letters. So that's up to you. And again, some listing agents aren't even giving it to their sellers. Yeah, I like that, Deborah. Only thing I would add is you want to be super specific on best net offer. Because does that mean after fees? I suppose that kind of equals the same. But that's super good. That's perfect. And that's smart of you to think of putting net in there, because with concessions, the purchase price means nothing. So, I mean, it means something, but the concession, if it's not disclosed what the seller is agreeing to pay for concessions in that escalation, then that's a big deal. What other questions, negotiation related, not negotiation or offer related? I don't know. What do you mean by that? Like actually selling it via an auction, or no, I'd say open market, because only people like Ryan Moe even know that auctions exist. Just kidding. I'm sure more than he knows, but it's just not as big of a market. And buyers are afraid. Agents are afraid of those because they just assume it's cash only. Because of an appraisal. So Divine asked, having list price, or yeah, paying the seller's list price, why will buyer, or having above seller's list price, why will buyers shy away from asking seller to pay closing costs? Because they don't have to accept that in this market. That's probably an offer close to a contingent offer right now, where they have a house to sell, not even looked at, because that the buyer doesn't have money to cover if the appraisal is short, and they it's a more risky. You have a cash buyer, conventional buyer, another conventional buyer with an appraisal gap. I mean, you have all these to choose from. It doesn't make sense for a seller to take that risk, because if they say 300,000, they'll concede 10,000. Then if it doesn't appraise for 300,000, the buyer doesn't have the cash if they're asking for closing costs to make up the difference. So it's just super risky. Hopefully that makes sense. What about parents co-signing today? Yeah, I suppose, to get them bumped from maybe FHA to conventional. Is that what you mean? Yeah, I like that. Very good idea. If they're willing to do it. I mean, guys, and we're in the market right now where we have to think outside the box and be creative. So Lynn has a very good idea. Hey, do you think your parents will co-sign? So if we can bump them up to, conventional, then your offers look way better. They just do. And they have lower conventional loans, like 1%, 5%, 10% conventional now. So it's a very good point. Very good point. Any other questions about offers or negotiations? All right, I don't know if all of you guys can type in the chat, but let's say you're having terrible luck with buyers and it's just a crappy day. Who do you guys turn to when that happens? Jesus, love it. My dog, I like it. That's a very safe place to go. The park, I like it. And the reason I bring that up, because even in the chat in the mastermind yesterday or last week, a lot of people put husband, fiance, wife, etc. And that's all fine and dandy. But I think what we want, like, try and find someone other than them, a mentor. Like my team obviously has, they can come to me and complain and be frustrated because I get it. And it's way better than them taking it home. Does that make sense? A lot of times, if you're doing, I guess the biggest thing is like, well, another point is, and this is not all the way across the board, and it, I don't know how many people this is like, but real estate can already be stressful. Like you have no idea sometimes, what you're going to make the next year. So it can be stressful for the spouse, right? Partner, family, as already. So if we come home and we're, frustrated, and I'm not saying like you can't talk to them. I hope you guys are understanding what I'm saying, but it just makes it harder for them from what, like in Club Wealth, like our discussion, across the country, hundreds of agents, it makes it harder for them to love what you do, just in general. And it's already a little bit harder to love what we do because it's like, can be interesting. So, and again, share your wins. I'm sure there's a positive way to do it, but just don't always be, because it's a hard market, guys. I cannot stress what I said at the beginning of the call enough, where this is going to be like water and oil, where there are way more realtors than listings right now. People aren't going to keep their license, like they don't have money for dues, So if we can make it through this, then there's nothing that can really be harder, and all of the stuff that we're learning, guys and gals, is super beneficial to forever, right? Like if the market changes, well, we still have our negotiating tactics, now it's just the buyers have control, right? So that's, super important. It also gives you ideas on what to counter for sellers. Like, hey, if you do this, just to help your clients even more. So that's huge right now. Is like, it's going, not only agents are going to quit, but buyers are going to quit, especially if they're locked up in leases that end soon. They're just going to renew. People aren't going to want to buy close to school starting and winter and blah, blah, blah. So realtors and buyers are going to leave the market. So it's huge to stay positive. You can throw a tantrum in your mind, or in your car by yourself, but don't be, doing that to buyers, which I don't think you would, but just keep it positive. And, a lot of it's on us to educate them. It's like literally our job. Like, hey, this is what we're seeing. You can even tell them about the mastermind, like, hey, there's a ton of agents that this is what's happening everywhere. And it's the absolute truth. 20, 30 offers, appraisal gaps, no inspection. And I know that no inspection scares you, but hey, I got a super neat deal for $100. I can have an inspector come and check all the big things, big ticket items. Right. And that's like you looking like a rock star. So they talk to their friends. No, I mean, hardly anyone's doing that. So if you guys want inspectors information, I can get that to you. We got a couple that will be willing to do that. It's like $150. It can get expensive, but you're way better off doing that than and waiving the inspection contingency. But again, just full disclosure, just make sure they're aware of what that means, especially if you're doing higher earnest money. Any other topics to chat about quick? Questions? Yeah, it's hard to say. I wish I knew. From what I hear and gather from other coaches and just club wealth in general, so there's probably a couple hundred agents. We just got to keep grinding. I'm already noticing way more coming soons. Whether or not more buyers are coming out, there's no way we would ever be able to tell. And what we have to realize is, just like everyone in this room, agents are like begging people to list their houses. So however many thousands of realtors there are in the Twin Cities, state of Minnesota, every single one of them is begging people to list their house. So, I think the biggest hurdle is, where do they move to? So it's just being creative. It's definitely a time to learn what you can learn, have as many tools as possible, for when things in an offer or house come up, you have something creative to make it work. That's kind of our job right now.
Neil, this
Hi.
is Liz. Hi,
Hey, Liz.
Hi, Neil. I haven't talked to you for a while. Good to hear you and see you again.
You as well.
I was thinking about something as you were talking about sellers. I think one of the more difficult things about it right now, and when we look at this really low inventory, is that it's always been somewhat true that sellers rely on their own past experience. And so the more real information that we can give them, and you made that point earlier, that it's an educative process, which I think real estate, but it's even more important now for them to get into the present and not think about their friend who's, stuck a homemade sign in the yard 4 years ago.
Yeah. No, that's super intelligent. And I'm glad you brought that up, because there are sellers out there, believe it or not, that have no clue that their house is worth what it's worth, and they would sell if they knew. So Liz, that's super important. And like, even when you're talking to sellers, like, you can make it super easy. If we price it here, you're going to get it sold in 3 days, take a couple weeks off, if they're worried about COVID. Otherwise, I have people that will buy the house, leave whatever stuff you want, close whenever you want, move out whenever you want, like 1,000%, whatever they want, besides the price. But in this market, it could be the price as well. Because that, I'm sure we're running into that a lot as well, where they don't want 700 people walking through their house. So that's where questions come into play, like asking the right questions. What's important to you? Getting the most money or less stress? You know, obviously you're going to try and alleviate all the stress possible, but you can't not let it be shown, you know. So very good question. Educating them on their options. Maybe they don't even know that there's an option to sell it. I guarantee you almost every house NRG has, there's a buyer within NRG. I would almost guarantee that.
I think, Neil, another point on that is I think we know around the cities where a lot of empty nester type people are and seniors who really could benefit by moving now, because let's be frank about it, they're not necessarily going to get this price in
their
a year or
lifetime,
so,
yeah.
you know, and so it might be that, and because buyers are eager, you have a bigger and a somewhat different, more accepting pool of potential purchasers. So that might be a listing point to make with sellers as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, the buyer pool right now is probably close to the highest. I mean, obviously the listing inventory being so low makes it seem like it's the highest it's ever been, but even if it's normal, because there's half the houses, but I don't even think it's normal. I think people are looking for COVID friendly houses, you know, maybe moving out of the cities because they can work from home. So now they don't care about commutes. I mean, there's just a lot of variables that's, you know, making the market as interesting as it is. So.
And also right now, because there are a lot of senior housing units that are going through, they were built 20 some years ago with HUD financing and they have to be refinanced now. So there are some move on deals for older people as well. So that might be a market to target.
I like it. That's
I know
awesome.
I'm trying to do it myself, but you know, whatever we can do.
Well, keep us updated how it works.
Just like everything else.
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. Well, you guys are a blessing. Thank you so much. So we're going to try and do this weekly. I think Raylyn has something scheduled next week. I mean, I really want to leave it up to you guys for the topics, stuff to talk about. I mean, I could talk myself forever, but I don't like to. I like to have value, and you know, you guys bringing content and stuff like that is super helpful. So just let Raylyn know ideas or what struggles or, you know, whatever we run into. I appreciate you all. I think you guys have my information, contact information. Otherwise, Raylyn has it for sure. If you guys need that, just don't hesitate to reach out. See you guys. Oh,
Andy, Neil, one more thing I might mention. During this pandemic time, you know, I'm a psychologist by background, and I started a new thing called R&D for the Soul, which is kind of a coaching thing. And if any of you are interested in that topic or have some ideas about that, I'd be glad to co-host a presentation with you.
Well, let's do that.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
That's a perfect idea.
Okay.
I like it,
We'll
Liz.
talk soon then. Thank
Yes.
you.
See ya.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.